Welcome to Studio Stories, where we step inside the studios of extraordinary artists to witness creativity in action. Our first visit is with internationally acclaimed sculptor and painter John Doubleday. For more than 40 years, his bronze masterpieces have captured some of the world's most iconic figures, while his paintings reveal another side of his restless, inspiring imagination. This is where art begins. This is Studio Stories.
Hello you, it's Studio Stories. Come on in.
Galleria Moderna are delighted to be here in your home, John, and we would love to hear your studio stories.
You're welcome.
Before we tour your studio and watch you creating, please share with our viewers how your journey into art began.
Oh, well, really from the year dot, I became obsessed with clay, really, when I was a child. I just decided that that was what I was going to do. So it was a sort of unwavering trajectory, really. Well, how sensible it was, I don't really know. But that is just my way of exploring the world. My parents weren't all that delighted at the prospect of me trying to make a living at it, but anyway, I decided that was what I was going to do. And after a little bit of a bit of resistance, I ended up going to art school. I went to Goldsmiths long before it was the fashionable place to go. So that's where I started.
You held your first exhibition at just 21 years old at the Waterhouse Gallery in London. Can you take us back to that moment when you first realised art wasn't simply a passion, but something you were destined or devoted to?
Well, I was devoted to it. It's just that I never really was going to do anything else. And I decided that one way or another, society was going to have to support me. So, that was... and really, that first exhibition was the one thing in my career that made everything a lot easier. I went in with a bank overdraft of £60, which doesn't sound anything now, but I was worried about it at the time, and left with a cheque after about 3 weeks of a bit over £2,000. Which enabled me to buy a house, which seems a bit mad now. I didn't know what to do with the money, so I bought a house, and it cost me £1,850, and I had a few commissions to sort of keep me going. And basically, if I'd been having to pay a mortgage, got married and had children, everything would have been so much more difficult. I just feel sorry for the youngsters now.
You studied sculpture at Goldsmiths during a creatively explosive era in Britain. Which artist, ideas or experiences at that time most challenged or shaped the way you approach form and imagination?
Well, at that time that I was at Goldsmiths, it went through a seismic change from a slightly old-fashioned, skill-based, traditional art training into something completely different, where the concept held primacy. So when Pat Millard, the principal, retired, Andrew Forge came in as head of fine art and basically kicked out all of the old boys with whom I got on rather well, and had this sort of more or less sort of completely free for all atmosphere, which what it really decided me was that my interest was in making objects within which meaning and story was embedded. So that was not something that was just an idea which you could get anybody to make, or something which was just, if you like, a big, impressive thing. I very much am wedded to the idea of creativity being a journey and allowing others to participate and respond to the materiality of the art object. So that has been the basis of my career, rather old-fashioned, if you like, but that's how I have looked at it. And as far as influence is concerned, I would say that Anton Ehrenzweig, who is a lecturer at Goldsmiths, and his thing was art theory. He was a psychoanalyst. Well, he's trained as a lawyer in Vienna, got out of Austria when the Nazis threatened, and came to England, having trained with Jung, and researched art theory. And he wrote a very interesting paper called Perception and the Eye, which looked at how what we perceive is not at all the same thing as the image that comes into the eye and falls on the back of the retina. For a start, it's upside down, and it's your brain that puts it the right way up. And that what you perceive is a combination of your experiences, your emotions, and it's a very complicated, interesting process. And he died while I was at Goldsmiths, and he was 58, and his book, The Hidden Order of Art, was published posthumously and has actually been in print ever since. Very interesting man, and we used to argue a lot. And the thing that I particularly remember is the trouble with you, Doubleday, is that there is a substratum of eroticism in everything you do. And I thought that was a sort of terrible criticism, but as a matter of fact, I think it's obvious, because your basic instincts and motivations, of course, are what drive you. Though breasts and bottoms are not quite as popular in the popular taste as they always have been historically, because objectification has become an issue. But that's just life. I mean, my studio is a bit of a nightmare, but would you like to come and have a look at that and follow me?
Thank you, John. Lead the way. Would you mind telling our viewers about this piece, please, John?
Well, I quite like lame puns. and this is going to be 2 pairs. Yeah, it'll be about like that and like that, and it's, in my mind, perfect pair, which is quite a nice, well, for me, quite a nice illusion of perhaps 2 compatible people. But of course they're facing the, opposite directions to each other. My wife and I have the privilege of 57 years of low-grade warfare. So I just think the idea of a perfect pair of 2 things, facing in opposite directions. This is hollow already, so I've made that, and that's just made with, something like that, not quite the same thing, but it's just, quite painstakingly put together and modelled into place. And I've got to just, where are we? Yes, stick. I'm going to just melt that a little bit, and get that joined up. It'll need refining a bit, and just see how that. Now, I think what I want is I want them facing in opposite directions, because that just, in a way, is the point. And I will get that. I think that's okay. That snuggles together quite nicely. So from a technical point of view, I'll be able to melt a little bit of wax into that join so that actually it becomes one. Then I'll put the little detail on the end there, and here I think probably that's run a little bit of wax into that. Then I can clean that back. So it then will be fixed, just temporarily. If I just run a little bit of wax in there. Yep, and that's job done. Then the next thing I will do is to seal it underneath, then open it up so that, I can't afford to have that solid because it won't cast. So I need to open that up from the underneath. I will do a sort of pilot hole somewhere around about there, and then if that's not, yes, that's probably about right, and then I can open that up and make sure that everything is going to cast as an even thing. And all right, it takes quite a long time. Rosso did actually work direct in wax, but there are not many of us who are stupid enough to want to do it. But it appeals to me as a technique. The element of risk, the fact that it's absolutely one-off appeals to me, and the fact that basically nobody else can be bothered, that also I find quite appealing. You each find your own journey.
Art journals have described your work as both sensual and irrational, almost emerging from submerged dreams. Do your ideas begin with a conscious observation of the world around you, or do they arise more instinctively from memory, imagination, or emotion?
It's a combination of both. Usually, an idea starts with specificity, and then echoes, emerging subcontexts. It is usually specific when it starts. My initial idea is quite focused, and then inevitably I think as one mind works round a subject, it becomes more complicated. Just as a for instance, for me, a fairly frequent theme has been landscape, which also includes figures, not as part of the landscape, but as sort of dreams or echoes or associations. And it is that complexity of process which interests me. So it's not really, one thing or another, but a journey which leaves a trace, like a snail leaving a trail of slime behind it. That's how I look at my work.
Your exhibition work feels deeply personal, while commissions often carry the expectations from others. How do you balance artistic freedom with the responsibility of creating pieces for public or private commissions, as you have done?
Well, to start with, I worked out quite early on that if you have sold something before you've started, that's quite convenient because and the other thing that I worked out is that it's no more difficult to sell a large thing than a small thing. So a mainstay of my practical career of earning a living has been basically large commissions. Let's say, one large commission a year has been basically enough to keep the circus on the road. And that is, I have always reckoned that I was not ashamed of or frightened of commission work, because I thought I would rather do something and make as good a job as I can of it, rather than let somebody else do it and make a less convincing job of it. Because, I think public commissions that don't really contain much in the way of meaning, I can't really see that they do a job. And then that has left other work produced for exhibition rather than commission, which allows a greater degree of freedom. Commission works really require it's like a three-legged stool. So I have to be satisfied and convinced with what I'm doing, otherwise there's no point. The client has to be satisfied that it meets their requirements, and it has to be within a budget. I've always believed in delivering value for money, and I've also always believed that it's a good thing to give people what they need rather than what they think they want.
Keeping with the subject of commissions for a moment, John, can you share with our viewers some of your more memorable and/or enjoyable experiences?
Well, I've always been more interested in what I'm going to do than what I've done. Basically, once a job is done, I only really take an interest in it if I've forgotten about it and stumble across it. But I mean, there have been things which have been amusing and interesting. I mean, to work with and to spend time with Nelson Mandela was extraordinarily interesting. But I've been at it for so long, there are also funny things that I can look back on. I mean, Golda Meir, for instance, she was a complicated, interesting character, so different from the toxic regime that they've got at the moment. I mean, Golda Meir was a Milwaukee school teacher. She was very funny. And oddly, against expectations, she was actually surprisingly feminine. So she was great company. And, I think it's always good when things are surprising. I failed to get a job to commemorate the gorilla Yambo, which was very famous at Jersey Zoo. But I did get the job to commemorate Gerald Durrell, which I've been thinking about a bit since, with so much attention being on David Attenborough. But Gerald Durrell was an early voyager in the realms of habitat, responding to habitat loss. He was a very, very interesting chap. I only met him and wasn't commissioned to do the memorial portrait at the entrance of the zoo until after he died. But he was just such an interesting character, and I love working with the animals. He's depicted with a round island gecko, and in particular sort of talking to, he's squatting down and talking to, as it were, talking to a lemur. And I was actually working from the lemur, which is represented, and he was very close to. And lemurs are lovely creatures. They've got such soft, silky fingers, and they smell fantastic. They, smell of dried apricots or something. I just think working with lemurs and having them clamber all over you was just absolutely such fun. So that's the sort of thing I remember, but more importantly, move on. What are you going to do next?
We would like to take this opportunity to thank you, John, for sharing your story with Studio Stories.
Well, you're very welcome. You've not been in a lot of trouble, so fine. Right, nice to have you here. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, bye-bye.
If you would like to connect with John and add one of his original works to your collection, you can explore his portfolio and get in touch through his website address. You have been watching Studio Stories. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Studio Stories, and thank you for watching. If you are an artist and would like to be considered for future episodes, please feel free to contact us at Galleria Moderna. To be notified of our next episode, click subscribe, and we will look forward to seeing you again.
Try and keep your hands still.
Yeah.
Right. Keep your arms by your side.
Yeah.
Be relaxed.
Just relaxed. Okay.